Welcome to SkyeTeam's People First with Morag Barrett.
My guests this week are Metty Bennett and Rachel Kuntzsch, the CEO and President of Public Sector Consultants. At this Michigan-based public policy firm, co-owners Julie and Rachel lead a team fueled by their passion for a world that transcends partisanship and is shaped by rigorous research and thoughtful discourse. Julie has been with the firm for more than 20 years, where her passion for well-conceived public policy started with her love of nature. She's spent decades looking closely at the intersection between our natural resources and quality of life. And today, Julie is a leading policy expert focusing on pointing political stakeholders to where good, people-focused solutions are easier to find and adopt. Rachel merged her consultancy with PSC 4 years ago, bringing her entrepreneurial spirit and business management experience along with her policy expertise to the firm. Today, Rachel oversees the firm's internal operations and provides strategic counsel and facilitation assistance to colleagues and clients to advance equitable public policy solutions. Together, Julie and Rachel shape the firm's strategy, set policy, make corporate, financial, and business decisions. And today, they're here to talk to us about what it's like running a woman-owned small business, their personal leadership journeys, and how to make co-leadership work. So, Rachel and Julie, welcome to People First.
Thanks for having us.
Oh my God, that's such an exciting introduction. Already I've got ideas of I want to learn more. But I'm going to go back. I start each episode with the origin story. What did you want to be when you grew up? So Rachel, why don't you start us up? If you go flashback to elementary school and teachers asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? What was front of mind for you when you were still a little girl?
You know, it's funny, you asked that question and I had to go back and ask my mom what I used to say because I couldn't remember exactly. But I mean, I definitely wanted to do something in the medical field, something that involved science and helping people in some way, shape, or form. And that's what that's what my undergrad background was in. And so obviously I'm not in the medical field. But certainly working in public policy provides an opportunity to help people in a multitude of ways. So I got there in terms of the ultimate goal, but just not through a straight line like some people's career paths may take.
I don't think I've come across anybody who's got a straight line career path yet. So I'll be curious to know what the pivot point was that brought you into public policy. But Julie, what about you? What were your dreams and aspirations when you were still at elementary school?
Well, I remember my mom would put me in front of people and say, Julie, tell them what you want to be when you grow up. And I would say, I want to be a teeny bopper. And they thought that was so funny. And what I was talking about, have you ever been to an A&W drive-in where there were always waitresses on roller skates that would deliver your food to your car? And then you would eat in your car from the window. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. And that's all I ever wanted to be. Waitresses delivering food to people, eating in their cars on roller skates.
Isn't it funny what captured our attention? Because that's just triggered a memory for me. And I can remember going into the grocery store, so I'm dating myself now. And there was a person with the little sticky gun that would go and put price labels on tins and things. I thought that was so cool. And it was all about speed and accuracy. Well, maybe less on accuracy. Of course, it's all barcodes now. All right, then.
Morag, so I guess to live your dream.
But to your point, Rachel, it's funny, isn't it, how our paths wind and wind along the way. And sometimes it's just being in the right place at the right time, but it's also having the courage to seize the opportunities. So what was the pivot point, Julie, that brought you into public policy and to PSC?
Well, I had to think a lot about this as I've been talking more in front of groups and thinking more about my leadership journey and who I am and how I got here. I had to do a lot of reflection, and what I've discovered is that it really was my upbringing. My mom was diagnosed with cancer when I was 5 and battled for her life pretty much every day of my whole growing up. Meanwhile, my dad was the primary breadwinner and, worked in a job that he hated, but needed to do it to take care of his family. And so he was, grumpy a lot, and my mom was sick a lot. And so I was in this position of wanting to make sure everybody was fine, like trying to protect my mom, trying to keep my dad happy, trying to anticipate any issues that would come up. What could I do to just have smooth sailing in the household? And I think that is why now the role that I play in public policy in Michigan and in other places is that bridge builder, that common ground finder, working in a nonpartisan, very fact-based way allows people that are on different sides of the political spectrum to come together to find solutions. And my first job was in advocacy, where I was fighting for the environment, and I was on one side of that issue, and I was so uncomfortable. And, I was always wanting to argue other sides, we should pass this bill to put a tax on carbon. But then I would argue the other side, like, well, these folks are just playing by the rules of the game and they're just trying to provide jobs. And, I'm fighting it from all sides and realizing, well, that's because I like the middle.
So as you look back 20 years in public policy and influence, what are some of the highlights that come to mind for you?
I love engaging with leaders from all different perspectives that are making a difference for the industries and the people that they represent, and am in awe of these leaders and how they bring these organizations forward, but then helping them all see eye to eye and find common agreement to make the state as a whole better, because everybody's after their silo and their piece of the pie. But when we get engaged, we facilitate them in a way where they can maybe not get everything they want, but get a lot of what they want. And in the end, have really good policy outcomes and make the quality of life for Michiganders better. It's just, I couldn't be happier than doing what I do. I think it's amazing.
I love that energy that radiates from both of you and everybody at the firm, actually, when they talk about the influence and the impact that they're having in the state of Michigan. So, Rachel, you shared at the beginning that your original passion was going to be in the medical field. So what was the pivot point for you then that took you from that career in medicine and supporting people to running your own business? Again, public policy.
The show is not long enough to go through the whole meandering path, but I spent some time volunteering in the medical field directly and learned what it really was. I think that especially for our generation and older generations, you didn't really get a lot of opportunity to experience what careers looked like fully. You had this idea of what they looked like, and I have the utmost respect for those that work in the medical field, but I identified while I was still an undergrad that it wasn't for me. And left when I left college, just needed a job and got a job in a business sector, and found that, like Julie, my upbringing had a big influence on me, and found that, wow, all the time that I watched my own mother in sales and customer service and contributed to her small business in small ways, from, being sent to the post office to buy a book of stamps when I was 7, those types of things that were, I was raised with a very, if it's going to be, it's up to me kind of approach. And so I think I wasn't afraid of venturing into something that was uncharted waters. And from there, just like you said at the front end, seized different opportunities along the way, had wonderful mentors and leaders that believed in me and gave me opportunities, and of course created my own opportunities as well. And found myself eventually down a path of having a 100-mile commute one way with 2 small children, and said, I got to make a change here. And so went off on my own and started my own shingle consultancy with a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. And I have no idea what I was thinking at the time, but it worked.
Well, yeah, but as you will have appreciated, coming from a corporate environment, notwithstanding seeing the hard effort that your parents will have put into their careers and your mum's business, what was most surprising for you as you made that transition from being an employee to now being the employer and starting your own company?
Yeah, I think that there's a misperception of when you're on your own, you make all the rules, and especially if you have clients, that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, there's certain things that give you a little more flexibility, but on the other hand, starting your own business, your HR, your marketing, your all of it. You own all of the decisions, whether they're good or bad. And there's a lot of bad ones when you first start a business. So I think that was a big learning. And then I don't think I expected the lack of sort of having a boss and mentors in my life to be as significant. I haven't had a boss since I was 28 years old. So that's a long time. And so finding people along the way that could serve that role wasn't something I really intentionally did. It just sort of happened. And I think looking back, if I had been more intentional, maybe some of those mistakes would have been lessened, especially in the first decade of business ownership.
I think that's one of the mistakes I know I made early on and that had to shift quite quickly, that even as a solopreneur, recognizing that this is still a team sport and that relationships are important, and those mentors that can help guide us and avoid making the same mistakes, etc. So what role have relationships, professional relationships and mentors played in your career, Rachel?
I think they've been huge. I mean, I have a business partner because of those professional relationships. I mean, that was one of the things early on that, just building relationships with other women leaders was really important. And so Julie and I got to know each other more than a decade ago through shared relationships, through, a group of women that got together. We called it Girl Power Happy Hour, and spent a lot of time together. But even just having, for me, I had a lot of clients that I also saw in a way as mentors, people that I contributed to their success, but they also contributed to mine. I learned a lot from a lot of people. Relationships to me are I wouldn't want to do any kind of work without being able to build relationships with people. And that's the part that I love the most about our work, is being able to get to know people, how people work, and just really connecting with people. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the things among many that Julie and I really share, is we love that kind of getting under the hood and connecting with people and getting to build those relationships.
So Julie, I mean, that's one of the things that stood out for my team and I as we've got to know PSC, is the culture and the values and the sense of team within the organization. It's palpable. I mean, it's a family, it's fun, it's engaging, but with very high standards. Talk to us a little bit about how do you create and nurture a culture like that, but also how do you maintain one in an environment like 2020 where you're not coming together, everybody at once, to the office anymore. You've now got 70 individual offices, satellite offices, with people working from home.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because, as Rachel was talking about, why one of the many reasons I love the work is because I love relationships, and it's really hard to build those and maintain those in this virtual environment. And to your first point about how to create that culture, I think it's because PSC, while we're a for-profit consulting firm, we're a mission-driven organization, and our mission is about improving people's quality of life within the state of Michigan and elsewhere. And that's through systems change. And that's what public policy is all about, is systems change. And so we practice what we preach, that's our mission on the outside, but it's also our mission on the inside. And so we empower people to pursue their passions, to be able to help others. And we all have that in common. This isn't just a job, it's a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. To want to work on public policy to make people's lives better. And so we let people work on what spins them up, as long as it fits our values, and it's on brand, that it's nonpartisan, it's fact-based, and you have a paying client most of the times. Sometimes you let things slide, but we do need paying clients. And so people are able to work on what they're passionate about, and we support them through professional development. We have a large focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We basically just walk the talk, and our employees see that, and it makes them really love working there and love each other. And it's a really special place, as you noticed. So, and I'm glad you did.
It's definitely a special space. And that makes it even more exciting to me when I look back and think about the decision that the both of you made, or as part of that decision making, to bring the two firms together. Because it doesn't matter how big the organization, I mean, the research shows that mergers and acquisitions have a pretty low success rate. But yours is a success story. So for both of you, go. What do you think made the difference? How were you able to integrate both teams so successfully?
I think it was a long dating period. I mean, as Rachel pointed out, we've known each other a really long time. And I've been with the company a long time. And I just knew that she was the right, it wasn't, obviously there were challenges with the merger, no doubt, but culturally and focus-wise, values-wise, I just knew she would fit in with the family, and so it wasn't that, in terms of culture, it wasn't that hard. And I knew that because I knew PSC and I knew her, so, and her team.
So Rachel, what about from your perspective? Was it really all plain sailing? And what were some of the surprises when you got to look behind the magic curtain that you've obviously worked through, but what caught you by surprise as you then stepped through the folds and started to get married? If we're going to move from dating to getting married.
Well, I'm not telling you everything. Nobody tells everything about their marriage. So I think one of the things that caught me quickly was, I had started a business that I owned for 12 years, and how much of my own personal identity was wrapped up in that. And so that was quite a transition. I mean, it was a namesake business. It was down the street from my kids' elementary school, from my home. I had this tight, small team. And so this process of letting that go and moving into something that I was now still a shareholder and owner of the firm, but one among others, because at the time, Julie and I had other partners as well, who we've since bought out to be a fully woman-owned business. But that was quite a transition. And then I think, just the process of working through that kind of emotionally and mentally was big for me. And then also, just like I said, we had other partners as well. And we all had we had a lot in common, like Julie said, in terms of our values and our focus and our commitment to good public policy. But everyone's different. Everyone has different personalities, and so kind of combining all of that together was a process that I didn't anticipate. That what that would look like. You can't really fully. But I think we were successful because the end game was about Julie and I being partners and carrying the firm forward. And had we not had that vision, had we not had that relationship, and really this commitment that we have to each other to always be authentic and vulnerable with each other, we've always had that. And so being able to just tell it like it is, and in a loving way, but we're honest with each other. I think that sometimes maybe that's not always the case, and then that can leave some things lacking when it comes to trying to bring two businesses together.
What was the most challenging for you to let go of in terms of the old definition of Rachel and success compared to the co-leader and current definition of success?
Being in charge. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was used to being in charge. It was ego. I was always in charge, which isn't great, really. It's certainly not great personally, but it's also, multiple heads are better. Getting other people's perspectives helps you make better decisions, helps you be a better person, a better leader. And so, just speaking honestly, that was something that I didn't even know was a thing until those shared leadership. And it's not just Julie and I. We have a fantastic leadership team that contributes to our strategic direction and our thinking. And so that wasn't something that I had. I had a much smaller company than PSC, and I was used to sort of just getting input, but then it was to me. So.
Yeah, and I like what you say, it's letting go of the ego. And I know as I've grown SkyeTeam, it used to be the Morag's way, and it turns out Morag's way isn't the only way. though it should be.
Right?
It's also not the best way. I've learned to my cost that my team just together, to your point, we are better together. Mm-hmm. But it can be hard because, to your point, we've got a foundation of trust, the friendship, etc. It allows you to show up authentically, is how you described it. It doesn't always mean, though, that we can hear authentically the feedback and the conversation or the questions for others. So as you think about the adjustment now, as you've both stepped up to be the co-owners, the principals of PSC, what have been some of the challenges or opportunities where you've had to redefine co-leadership to make it work for both of you? So Rachel, how has it impacted the relationship, but also what are those areas that you've had to focus on to make it successful?
That's a good question. I mean, I think for both of us, kind of really identifying the stuff that excites us. There's sort of the what the world says you should be doing and leading, and there's the what actually practically and personally makes sense. And so the process of us, and we've been sole co-owners for a year now. Actually, is a year right now. This month. Yeah, this month. So I think the process of like kind of being open to saying like, I don't need to do that. Like she's better at that, or he's better at that if it's somebody on our team, or it's more efficient, or it just makes sense. And being able to really own the things where I can be the most effective, and then being able to speak that truth to Julie, and being able to say like, you're good in this space, own that, live that, do that. And I think that's one of the areas that we've really grown together, is being able to identify the areas that not only spin us up, but where we can shine, and then lifting each other up. We talk a lot about how as women, that doesn't always happen, in the world. Women tend to, they can be very competitive and very hard on each other. And that's just not how we roll.
Mm-hmm. What about for you then, Julie, as you've stepped into and embraced this co-leadership role? What has been most surprising for you?
It requires a lot of self-reflection, which I don't like to do. I don't like meditating. I don't like yoga. I don't like, all that stuff. I just like to get stuff done. And if you don't spend time reflecting on what you need and what you're good at, and you just keep moving forward like a robot, it'll come out sideways at some point. And I've had a lot of sideways. COVID has really exacerbated, like with a lot of things. It's made existing things worse. Things that have always been there, it's put the salt in the wound. And so I've had to do a lot of that. And I want to echo, what Rachel was talking about in terms of women a lot of times feel like there's finite room for leaders. And I think and so you have this natural instinct to be competitive and to get, secure your dance space and make sure people know, I've got this and you're there and I'm here. And there's room for all of us to lead and to do well. And certainly for Rachel and I to lead and do well in our, 50 some person public policy firm. So just checking myself when and thank you, Morag, because you've been helpful in this journey for me, to be really honest about when my feathers are getting ruffled with Rachel and why that is. And it's usually because of me, something with me that I've not explored and that I need to. So that's been the hard part and the best part of the whole thing.
And the liberating part, because I think we all have that power to move from first that it's their fault to, let's just start with me and looking inward as to why are my feathers ruffled? What need is not being met? And how can I better articulate that so that we can move forward together? And to your point, 2020 has been the leadership crucible for many of our clients that none of us have asked for. But to your point, has rubbed salt in the wound, and cracks and fissures that may have been worked around when we were together first face-to-face in other organizations, I am seeing us starting to cause fissures and issues with how they move forward. So again, I'm curious, what are you hoping that the broader we and the more narrow PSC we, what are you hoping that people take away from this experience?
The pandemic.
And this whole work from home, just it's caused an opportunity for us to reflect and get thrown in at the deep end. So if there was one lesson, leadership lesson to take away from this, what would it be for each of you?
I mean, the first thing that came to mind for me was adaptability. I think that we've all been forced to adapt, to this evolving situation in terms of how we manage our teams, how we work with our clients, how we do our work. And I think when we're pushed, we can, which we have been, we can adapt, we can do things differently. And so my hope would be that we don't lose that we don't, turn around and go, okay, we've got to go back to doing everything the way we used to do it. There's more flexibility that it has brought people in their lives. I mean, granted, you've got people trying to manage their families or whatever their situations are at home. That's made it very challenging. But at the same time, we've experienced this ability to sort of weave our work life and our personal life together in a way that, while sometimes very challenging, it's proven that it can be done. And so to the extent that we can hold on to that ability to adapt and be flexible, there's some silver lining, I suppose, in that.
Okay. What about for you, Julie? What are you hoping that we can take away from this experience?
I think what I try to tell our staff is to be kind to yourself and have, give yourself some grace. And that's something that I also need to hear. Sometimes that I know it's easy to say, it's not easy to embrace for yourself, but we hire exceptional people that are extremely hardworking, and this has just challenged people in unthinkable ways. From I'm getting emotional. It's from like homeschooling. Sorry, people's families have been ill, and but these staff of ours just keep going, and they keep going, and it's just important to have some grace for yourself at this time, because it's hard. It's a hard time that we're all going through.
And I love that, because what you've just so beautifully articulated and demonstrated, it's the human and the humane side of business. And that's what's built such a strong team and connection with PSC, is that in your own different ways, you care deeply about the people in the organization and the community in which you're working and you influence. Until when we all have high standards, and it can be easy just to continue to raise the bar and beat ourselves up when we aren't able to do everything that we think we should. But the grace, to your point, is saying, did I do my best? Mm-hmm. And then taking a breath and letting it go. And then we get up the next day and we do our best. And Rachel, you said it. And sometimes we make the wrong decision. And sometimes we make a decision that with hindsight gets tweaked. But we're doing our best for ourselves, our family, and our work family too, to move us forward. So as you look at the projects and the research that you're doing right now, I don't know to what extent you can comment on it, but what excites you about the next few months? And as you look into 2021, what are your hopes and dreams for PSC?
Well, what I'm excited about is that it feels like people are embracing different ways of working and are moving forward. So a lot of the work we do is in support of organizations to either create, strategies and plans for the future. And a lot of people just put that on pause, including ourselves. We were supposed to have a strategic plan kick off at the beginning of the year, and it just felt like, how can we do that? But now I think people are getting on board with this new normal and are able to pop their heads up and do some normal things, like think about the future, make plans, make progress. And that's been exciting and made me feel really hopeful for the first time in a while.
Rachel, what about you? What excites you as you think into the future and the near term?
So PSC's worked forever really in helping to support public policies that will lift up those that are historically disadvantaged or historically underrepresented. And that's not new for us, but I think the rest of the world has been awakened. I shouldn't say the rest of the world. A lot of people have been very awakened to that, but at least in public policy, there's much more of a recognition when we look at issues around diversity, equity, equitable public policies, inclusion, and that's something that is a part of our ethos at PSC, but we can be doing more, and we are doing more, and so really being able to lean in more to ensure that the stuff that we're working on, the policies that we're helping to support, there's that lens of, who does this impact, how are they impacted, how can we ensure that groups are represented appropriately, and that we're not continuing to perpetuate systemic racism and the way we do work at a policy level.
Okay, thank you. So for people listening, if they want to learn more about the work that you're doing or perhaps explore an opportunity to tap into the expertise of you and your team, how do they find out more? Where do they go?
Well, you can go to our website at pscinc.com. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter and find out all those good social media handles from our website.
Okay, I'll make sure all of that information is included in the show notes around this video. Rachel and Julie, thank you very much for sharing your journeys today. I look forward to our ongoing conversations and wish you a fabulous week.
Thank you, Morag.
Thank you so much for joining Morag today. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe so you don't miss a thing. If you learned something worth sharing, share it. Cultivate your relationships today when you don't need anything before you need something. Be sure to follow SkyeTeam and Morag on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you have any ideas about topics we should tackle, interviews we should do, or if you yourself would like to be on the show, drop us a line at info@skyeteam.com. That's SKYE team.com. Thanks again for joining us today, and remember, business is personal and relationships matter. We are your allies.